Hey guys, Mr. Adams here. Um, I have a good question for you. If you go to vote, does your vote even count? No. Short answer, no. Sometimes it doesn't. And I'm going to explain why. So, this video, will it be a long video, Mr. Adams? Yes. Is it going to be a good video, Mr. Adams? Absolutely yes. This might actually be one of the best videos I will ever make. Hands down, drop the mic, walk away, give me my paycheck now. So, I'm going to try to give you every bit of information I can to really explain what this thing called the Electoral College is and why it potentially makes it so that your vote doesn't even count. What this connects to and ties in with is the executive branch of the government, which, as most of you know, popularly is led by the president, who's the most probably visual person within the government itself. The executive branch is actually loaded. It's almost like the president is like the tip of the iceberg. There's way, way, way more departments and people involved that are actually a part of that branch than you realize. But when it comes to how the people of the United States elect their president or temporary leader, it's not as straightforward as you think. We'll start with this. The 2016 presidential election popular vote. If you look at these two numbers, 48.1, 46.6, Hillary Clinton, the Democratic nominee, would have actually been the president if this was based on popular vote. But Trump won the electoral vote, despite not winning the popular vote. As you can see, he's got 306 here. The threshold here in the middle is 270 to win. All the states that are lit up in red show you the states that he won the electoral votes from and how he got up to 306, despite not having the popular vote. Now, of course, good question. How does this work? Because states are not entirely red or entirely blue or entirely Democratic or Republican. We're both. Each one of these states, as you can see here, Texas, thoroughly red, right? No. Each state is a portion of a pie. Some voters that went for Hillary, some for Trump, and other third-party candidates. And that goes basically for every state. There's none of them that are solidly blue or solidly red. So how is it then that these states give all of their votes to just one person? Well, here's the trip. And this is really going to mess with your head. If there was a third candidate on the ballot in 2016 called did not vote, it would have been the president. And I'll say that again. Please look at this visual. More people in every one of these gray states did not vote than actually voted for a candidate. Only 2 states had more people who were registered voters that consistently voted for Trump than not. And only a few for Hillary had states that majority of the people showed up who could vote and did vote for her. The vast majority of electoral votes should have gone to nobody because we didn't vote. So how is it that you have an election that is not decided by popular vote, but electoral votes, but we didn't even vote in it? The turnout rate of the 2016 election is this. 25% showed up, voted for Trump. 25% showed up, voted for Clinton. And almost 50% of the people who were eligible to vote didn't. So that means you only allowed 50% of the possible voting pool to decide your election. And of that, it was pretty clearly a split. So how do we end up with Trump? Well, this problem of only having a fraction of eligible voters show up, it's been going on for 60 years now. Look at this. Trump and Hillary. How much of the population showed up? 26-26. Obama, Romney, 28-26. Obama, McCain, 30-26. Bush, and Kerry, 28-7, 28, 24, 24, 20. I mean, literally the highest ever that somebody showed up was Lyndon B. Johnson, who was the president who took over after JFK unfortunately was assassinated. So consistently within the United States, when we have presidential elections, it's a lot closer than we realize, and a lot less people are actually voting than we realize. Look at this, the 2016 election. Hillary, once again, just barely edged out Trump in the popular vote, but he got more of the electoral votes. In 2004, many of you guys probably not were born yet, but George W. Bush also just barely edged out John Kerry, and he beat him in the electoral vote. But 4 years before, one of the most famous elections of all time, it was a dead tie. Al Gore technically had more, just by a fraction, just so more population vote. And then it came down to a final count that took months. Guys, I can't describe what it was like to you. We had months of them not knowing who actually was the official president. Bill Clinton at the time was the president who was leaving, but it was not clear for a while who was actually going to be the new one. And it ended up being just barely George Bush edging out Al Gore. And this election still is being questioned as should it have been done that way? They really showed how broken the system was. Because the current system of the Electoral College is a winner-take-all system where it relies on the majority vote in each state. So these different numbers that show up and the different colors that they're called, that means that candidate got more majority of the votes, and so they take all the points. They take the whole state. But is this majority-take-all system really fair? Because we're not states of whole red and whole blue voting Democrat and Republican. We are the purple people eater. This is actually how those proportions look when you blend them together. Each of these counties, yes, you do have, if you can see this, swaths of red Republican, and you do have concentrated cities that are blue, but for the most part, we're kind of both. We kind of blend together. But in the Electoral College, they assign states a number of votes based on the population of that state. So you have states in the mountains where literally there's not very many places to live, not very many people, but the bare minimum is at least 3 because it represents the 2 senators that each state has, and then however many House of Reps, Congress people they have. If you remember from my lesson the other day on the legislative branch, you have 2 parts of Congress. The Senate is where each state gets 2 representatives, and then the House of Reps is more based on how many people actually live there. How much should you have representation based on population? And that's how the electoral votes get counted in. So at a bare minimum, you have states where, no offense, but nobody lives there. Up in Alaska, part of the mountain states in this area, but they still get 3 votes per state. Whereas, as you can see, some of these other just mega places where tons of people live, California, Texas, Florida, New York, Pennsylvania, Illinois, Ohio. I mean, even New Jersey. We are a teeny tiny little state. Hey guys, we're in New Jersey over here. Hey, don't forget about me, teeny little New Jersey. But we have 14 electoral votes, which is pretty high considering how small we are because it's based on our population. When you think about where most people live in the United States, maybe you've not really looked at maps like this before, but we are concentrated primarily in big cities and also primarily on the East Coast. On this right-hand map, every red dot represents a town. And in here, you can see this is population density. This is New Jersey right here. Teeny little New Jersey is almost solidly deep red because we are one of the most densely populated states in all of America. More people live close to each other in this part of the nation than in most parts of Europe or anywhere in the world. And as you can see, look at these big cities I could point out: Cincinnati, Detroit, Chicago, Miami, Tampa Bay, Houston, Dallas, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Seattle, Colorado. I mean, this is where our population actually is. Half of the US population actually lives within just 9 states. And then the other half lives in the other, what am I doing, 41? So when it comes down to splitting up those votes for Electoral College sake, it's these massively filled states that become the battleground states. You want all of Texas's points. You want all of Florida's points. You want Pennsylvania's points, New York's points. A political cartoonist drew it up to make it look like this, that to some people, to the candidates, this is how the Electoral College can feel or look. That really it comes down to your 4 blue chip, mega big boomers where all the points are going to get racked up. If you know that you're going for the 270 points to win, you're going to grab a lot of those points real quick if you can grab the majority of voters in these states. And this is another great one that's just like mind-blowing. Each of these blue states has a smaller population living in it than the county of Los Angeles. And I'll let that sink in. Every single one of these states, including Rockin', New Jersey, has less people living in that state's borders than live in the super packed, concentrated area of Los Angeles. Los Angeles is the second largest city in America. First, of course, is New York, then Chicago, Illinois, Houston, Texas. Then at the moment, I think it's like Washington, D.C., and then Philly, so on and so forth. But when you have that many people living in such a tiny amount of space, how do you account for all the representation that they should get versus all the other people that might not be represented? Because I'll remind you, you have states that aren't entirely Republican or aren't entirely Democrat, but what happens if you live in Texas and you're a Democratic voter and you want to vote for Hillary, but enough of the votes went for Trump here in Texas at the bottom, and he gets the majority. He gets all 38 of those votes. So it begs the question, if you're voting as a Democrat in a state that has a chance to go Republican, does your vote even count? Or better yet, if you voted for one of these third parties, the little sliver of yellow, if you voted for a third party candidate instead of the big two, does your vote even matter? Well, maybe not, because that's the problem with the Electoral College. Your vote is basically canceled out if it's not in the majority. Now, you look at a state like California, which really had a big chunk of blue. They really pushed for Hillary in California, but there's still a nice chunk here of people that wanted to vote for Trump. And if I live in California and I want to vote for Trump, but I know I live in a state that almost always goes Democratic, does my vote count? It makes me think, like, I wonder if people should move. Like, should you move to a different state a year before the election in the hopes that if it's a close state like Pennsylvania end up being almost complete 50-50 split, your vote actually then might tip the balance. If you live in one of the battleground states like Virginia, Florida, Ohio, Michigan, if you live in one of those battleground states, then yeah, your vote really might count. It might make the whole difference for everybody. But if you live in a state that almost historically goes in a different direction, like look at this, I think this is Alabama here. Pretty solid chunk for red Trump. Or California over here. But like we said, the popular vote, you were splitting hairs. It basically came down to like a 50-50 split. But it makes me wonder, even of all the people that did show up for vote for Hillary or the people that did show up and vote for Trump, how many does that actually represent as far as the actual population of all of us, because you didn't vote. So let's do the math then. The approximate US population right now is 330 million people. The amount of people who voted for Trump, 62 million and change. 62 blah, 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 numbers. Now, if I take out the 62 million from 330, I get this, 267 million and change. So that makes me wonder, how many times can I take 62 million and get 267? If you divide this, the ratio you get is 4.3, which means this is 4.3 times as much as this number, which gets you here. How many people that live in the United States actually voted for Trump? It's 1 out of 5. If you took 5 people in a room, only one, technically, voted for our current president. So if only 20% of the people living in this country voted for the president, what happens to the other 80%? We're all now following the same laws and rules and stuff like that. Well, it's good to remember, though, guys, that not everyone can vote. When you think about how many people can actually show up and vote, these are the people who can't. Anyone who's under 18. And then more importantly, even if you're over 18 and you're not registered to vote, you have to register. There's, of course, a big amount of us who choose not to vote. Remember, we pointed out that the vast majority of Americans just didn't vote and let the minority show up. And even that minority that did show up split the vote 50-50. It was super close, and Trump won. I think I've discussed this in class with you maybe a few times before. I actually choose not to vote. I'm one of the people that I have the right to as an American citizen, but I choose not to based on my deep religious convictions. There's values that I've instilled in my life that mean more to me than just year-by-year politics. And I'm aware of the ripple effect that can cause, but my vote would be in something that's greater than just what this country can offer. But that's part of the problem. You do have many people who just choose not to vote. You also have those who are not allowed to vote. Like if you've ever been convicted and have felony charges, technically you lose your right to vote if you're a convicted felon. And immigrants as well. We're a nation of immigrants. We've discussed in one of our previous lessons that about 15% of our population are immigrants, whether they're people waiting to get documented, undocumented, who knows what. Those people can't vote yet. So I'll wrap up this long video with just this question again then. In our current system, where you have a winner-take-all electoral college instead of population, does your vote then really matter?